everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I'm Christiana Ellis.
And I'm Mike Mateen.
And tonight we're talking about the penultimate episode, not of that other show that just had a penultimate episode, but of Survivor, Edge of Extinction.
Yay.
I think people are happier with this one to the extent that they're paying attention.
Well, yes.
Not that we need to get into that whole conversation, but we're talking...
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, coming up this week, tomorrow, in fact, will be the 3-hour finale of Edge of Extinction. But tonight we're talking about the episode that hasn't happened yet. So, let's get right to that. This is continuing to be the Rick Show.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean... We finished off the last episode talking about, well, seems like it's Rick's to lose, but he's going to have to keep pulling tricks out of his pocket or from out of his sleeve or whatever if he's going to stay in there because everybody's gunning for him. And yet, so far, he's managed to keep doing that.
Well, yeah, and, you know, he's obviously for sure safe. Well, tonight's episode because he won the immunity, but then he didn't end up having to use his idol.
Mm-hmm.
So he has that one, and that was where I said, I think when we discussed this last time, I was like, I feel like if he can make it through there, he's got a shot because there's, you know, he's competing against less people, he has to win immunity, and you just never know with how somebody might think that they can beat him, and someone else, it depends who comes back from Extinction.
Well, yeah, that's the big wild card still, is we don't know who might come back.
Yeah, so, you know, I still think he has a tough road to win. I mean, obviously he's going to make it at least one more time.
Mm-hmm. I think it's almost guaranteed that he will. But the only reason I hesitate is because Dalton Ross just recently wrote a big, long, like 14,000 word article that's all about an oral history of what he calls the greatest Survivor moment ever, which is the moment where Eric, having won the individual immunity challenge, gave up his immunity to save someone else who promptly voted him out, and is considered to be one of sort of the greatest sort of moves and betrayals that just, yeah. So in any event, that was just an example of someone who theoretically was immune, but gave it up and then was voted out for it. So, you know, I don't think that Rick would do that, but it has happened. It
has happened.
Yeah.
And there have been idol nullifiers, you know, so you never know if one of those comes into the mix, and like if you over at Extinction or something, like you don't.
We don't know what the circumstances might be of, anyone. When they come back, do they come back with anything? We don't know.
Right. And again, it's not out of the question that something can nullify an idol. So if you go into it with that being your only strategy, that can be an issue for you. So,
Yep.
But like you said, ostensibly he should be safe next time.
Mm-hmm. Especially,
then, again,
since
next time,
he has won challenges in the past too, so it's not even outside the realm of possibility that he might just, win more.
Yeah, and then try to use the idol to buy a vote for the next round off of somebody, which of course, if you're doing the right thing, like you would agree to that and then still vote him out because he's going to beat you. Because right now, I think outside of there's just a really strong favorite coming out of Extinction for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know.
Who beat him sitting at the end?
Oh, sorry, I think I lost you in the middle of that sentence a little bit.
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't know who could beat him at the end, and you said I think it's hard to know. It's like, I don't see anybody that's there that he's got, he's kind of the jury favorite right now.
Yeah.
Even the people who dislike him dislike the fact that he keeps sticking around, but respect the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to the point where, I think it's part of what, obviously there was more pieces to it, but it's part of what cost Aurora this time.
Mm-hmm.
Where just this single-handed focus on like, we have to get rid of him, and then like once he's off the table, it's like
Right.
there wasn't another option. Like,
Well, yeah, they spent half the tribal council this time talking about how great is this guy who you can't vote for this time. Like, why are they even talking about him when he's immune? Like, they spent a lot of time on that.
and a
But
lot of that was driven by Aurora. Like,
yeah,
and he even said that, like, she seems to be just like laser focused on me
right.
to the point where, and he even called her out at the end when she's like, she got voted out, and the first thing she had to say was, "Guys, vote him out." Like,
Yeah, still.
yeah, and he's like, still, like, didn't you not learn your lesson? That's part of why you're gone, is because you couldn't let this go, and
Right. Yeah.
you had no other move or maneuver, and so you became the target.
Honestly, working with him would probably have been her best shot, except that she was so determined to get him out. Now that said,
Yeah.
I mean,
But see, that was the problem, is he
yeah,
was immune, so why not work with him this time and then worry
yeah,
about getting him out next time?
mm-hmm,
Instead of leaving yourself hanging out there and not realizing, and I thought it was, again, and it was so short-sighted of her to be like, oh, he made like this one comment and you all just flipped and believed him and flipped on me. And it's like, that's again where you're missing it. They had always talked about you as the second option all afternoon.
mm-hmm.
And you didn't catch that because you were just like, oh, well, if it's not him, I guess it'll just be her.
And in fact, we don't even know if the whole thing about promising to give the idol to Julie was even really what changed their mind.
Right, or even just like the risk of it,
Right.
not that they believed he would do it, but it's like, hey, we had this second option of her. Let's not risk it. Let's just do what Rick wants.
Yeah.
Because we were all ultimately okay with it.
We don't want one of us to go instead because we
guessed wrong.
Right.
And that's the thing, is like, she didn't have that backup because she didn't think that was a possibility, because she thought it's only Rick,
Right.
just couldn't let it go. So, I had started to like her more, but this sort of ability to see past it really frustrated me.
Yeah, I the thing is, it's like I'm totally on her side in terms of, from her perspective, yeah, you got to get Rick out. He is the biggest threat. I totally get that. But when he's immune, it's why bother even continuing to have that conversation? So it's like you're continuing to harp on something that's been rendered moot.
Right. When, he could potentially come to you and say, okay, well, this time I'm immune,
Mm-hmm.
and I know Julie is close with me, but we're not necessarily going to be, we might have, we just never know about idols and things. Why don't, you are a potential target. You've been voted a number of times. Like, why don't you come work with me and Julie, and let's get rid of one of your people that you're going to be looking at getting rid of down the line that maybe you're going to have some trouble. Like Gavin might be tough later down the line. Like I still think Gavin is a subdued threat to win this game, because Rick is definitely the favorite, but he's also, because he's the favorite, he's a big target.
Yeah.
And that's where I see somebody like Gavin Slender. But so anyway, if you go to there and then Aurora's like, okay, then you knock out Gavin, but you protect yourself from something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not that it would have been the best move, but it's like, at least be open to it instead of just being like, nope, I refuse to talk with Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that always left me feeling a little ambivalent with Aurora is I'm not sure if ambivalent is the right word, but the whole aspect that she's mentioned before in the main show, and then a couple of the like one of the deleted scenes had her talk about it, her background as a foster kid, and talking about sometimes that made it hard to make friends and that sort of thing. Like, there's a part of me that recognizes that probably there really is an actual contribution from that background to her not managing to connect with everybody, which is it's not like a 1-for-1, because obviously people with that background could also be very good at making friends, and people could, with a perfectly, standard nuclear family, no trauma background, could also have trouble making friends. So it's not like a direct correlation, but she connects them for herself, right? And talks about not being able to make those close friendships or those close connections. And I think we can kind of see that play out in the game. And it's just one of those things where, even as I can say, from everybody else's perspective, it makes sense to vote her out. But I guess I just I feel bad for her. I don't know. I'm not sure if the feeling is complicated, I guess. It's
Right.
not that I think anyone else should have done something different. It's more just a matter of, it seems like part of what hurt her in this game is something that's maybe a painful subject in her own life, too.
Right.
And that's kind of sad. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's, she does fine in most circumstances, but this is, a pressure cooker of a situation here in Survivor.
Yeah, I mean, that is part of the appeal of the show, is stripping you down to where it's, the most difficult. So, like you said, it feels like a pressure cooker. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, some other interesting things happened.
Yeah. When we started the episode, we had everyone were coming back from tribal council and talking about how Devins gets all the good toys. Of course, referencing his idol from the last time.
Right.
But we have, Gavin talking about feeling a little bit guilty about blindsiding Ron, but thinks really, Rick needs to go home. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Nothing unexpected there. I liked that Rick was trying to play up this misconception that it seems a bunch of people had, which was that the idols are only coming from Edge of Extinction. I guess the people there, at least as far as Rick knows, seem to think that people aren't finding idols at the beach. Now, we know Lauren, at least, doesn't think that, because she found one of her own and still has it, right? So,
right.
I loved, too, though, so, him trying to play up that he didn't find it at camp, I thought that was cool. And then I actually also think it was cool for Lauren to kind of go to him privately and say, come on, I know. But the problem is, of course, that she can't really explain how she knows without giving away her own, so...
Which I always keep forgetting, even though we're obviously front and center in that part of this episode, I keep forgetting in the calculus for this that, she does have that, and I don't know if it's one or two more times they can play it. I think I thought it was one, but then with someone coming back, it may extend the amount of times.
Right, so they're at 5 now. If someone comes back at the beginning, they'll be back to 6. So then they'll go 6 to 5, and I think 5 to 4 is the last time they can use it.
Right, so... Okay, so, because the way that I was thinking about this was, a different way in that, Devins would have to use it, but he only has to use his next time if he is not immune. And or doesn't think he's the target for whatever reason.
I honestly, he should play it anytime he's not immune from some other way, no matter what else he thinks is happening, I think.
Yeah, and then just worry about trying to win immunity the next time. Yeah,
right.
Don't
risk it at this point.
Yeah, for one more spot in the game. At that point, what's the difference between going from 6 to 5 and 5 to 4? I mean, ultimately, those don't make any difference.
Yeah.
You don't make some 5th place amount of money. It's not like golf tournaments. You don't make the 5th place purse. Versus the 4th.
I think they do, actually, though. Not that
he.
Yeah, I think the people who get 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all of that, I think they do get lesser amounts of money.
Not distinctly enough, probably, to make it worth.
Well, right. I mean, you're not playing that way. Everyone wants to win, right? It's just a matter of it's like a consolation prize. Right,
and at this point, he's going to be invited back to some fan favorite episode. He's going to be. He has nothing to gain from risking anything at this point. He just needs to just try to get himself to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, especially because he knows that easily out of everyone there, not only does he have the resume, so to speak, to talk about, but he's probably the best talker left. So, like, he does
And he
not want
has
to.
the relationships outside of just his talking. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
make. There's no reason for him to take any chances. At that point, it's just kind of. I mean, I don't know. It's
and
obviously
he's
there might
decent
be
at
some
challenges.
circumstance that could come up, but
And he's decent at challenges.
yeah.
So it's like, even if you felt 100% secure and you were not immune,
Mm-hmm.
and you could use your and you could save your idol or use it. You just use it and just say, you know what? I'll take another shot rather than risk it. I'd rather just take another shot at winning immunity next time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he's not in a position where he can't win immunity and has to like hold the idol forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I just don't see it. But anyway, I forget that Lauren also has this and that,
Yeah.
and no one knows it. She's
Well,
not, well, not no one. Sorry.
yeah. Yeah, she's been in this interesting position where she it's not so much that she's been playing a below the radar game all along, but she was kind of seen as this like part of this power group with Kelly. And then everyone kind of thought of her as neutered, so to speak, when Kelly was taken out, right? So nobody's really been paying any attention to her since then.
Right.
Which is good and bad, right? Obviously, she hasn't been the target, which has allowed her to hold on to this thing, but also means that like what's her case going to be when she gets to the end?
Yeah, and I mean, she'll probably have one of those like, I've been on the right side of X number of votes. I was,
Mm-hmm.
but she's gonna have to do something later. And having that idol, I mean, if she uses that in a good way, I don't know how it would go down. But if in an interesting way,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden it's like now you're starting to paint a little bit of a different picture. Like, okay, you could say exactly what you just described. Like, I was part of the power group with Kelly, who was, but Kelly became the main target. Once Kelly got voted out, no one really paid attention to me, and I let that kind of wash over and just sat there and stayed in
Mm-hmm.
a safe spot with my idol. And then when it was ready time to step out in the shadows and actually make a move and use that idol that no one knew about,
Mm-hmm.
that I kept to myself, I did, and I was able to knock out so and so with by doing this, and therefore I'm now sitting here when these other people are not. I'd say there's a way that she can make that case.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy. I think they're.
Yeah. It's
But I
it's
think it's
another
stronger
thing
than
of depends on who she's up against.
right. It's stronger than what Julie can make.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Victoria's kind of in the same boat as her, just doesn't have
Yeah.
the idol.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Like, I've been a part of like a lot of good big decisions, but I'm not. Like, she may think the fact that like they won't make a move without her being endorsing it is like a power thing for her. They may look at it as like, well, we just didn't know if you would like freak out, so we had to make sure you were on board. Like, those things get a little weird. And then again, we also don't know who's coming back, and
Yeah. That's actually I feel like I've come to like the whole Edge of Extinction thing more and more as the season has progressed. I think I was kind of wary at the beginning. It's like, well, let's see where this goes. But I think it creates an interesting dynamic because, of course, we've had the jury ever since the merge, but one of the jury could come back. And so,
right.
for example, we've got all of the jury hanging out at Edge of Extinction. Are they sharing secrets? Are they sharing secrets with someone who could come back into the game and now know those secrets? Like, that is interesting. And this position of having to do all your endgame calculus, not having any, like, with this huge wild card that could come in, you have no idea who it could be.
Right.
I mean, it could be some, like a fluke and Reem shows up again for some reason. Like, I mean, it's theoretically possible. Although, actually, I think that would probably not be as big a problem for everybody because I don't think she would be likely to be the one to
but
win.
it's an example of how it could oddly change things because, while many of these people would come straight out of here and become a threat right away, like Reem is all of a sudden, if she came out of it, she's not necessarily like a threat.
Yeah.
And so she's not necessarily the first to go, but you're sitting there and you're like, but you also don't know what she, like, granted, we know she's kind of rubbed people the wrong way over there, but you don't know that. And so you're like, well, okay, but does she have these relationships on the jury that if she's at the end with us, like she can say, like, I was the longest surviving Extinction person, but I also don't think
stuck it out all that time. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's also kind of caustic. So do I want to sit next to her or do I not? And like all of a sudden, like you said, the calculus of like Endgame changes a little bit if you get somebody in there, and you can get somebody more of like an in between person like a Chris, where they were kind of like a strong threat at one point, but they left before really they established anything. But they've done a good job of making relationships with the people over on the other side and not really establish themselves as like a threat. But then if all of a sudden you just come out and win and get yourself back, like you're kind of a real wild card there. Like no one really knows how to like think about that.
Yeah. Tricky. But so in any event, we also started this episode with kind of the early part of the slightly sad story that Aurora came to have in this episode, which is to say that at the beginning she was feeling happy because she had some people that maybe she can work with. Victoria, Lauren, and Gavin, that is. And, with the idea that she's going to be trying to target Rick. They have a common enemy, so to speak. And so that's the plan. But here's where we have the part that is just dumbfounding, which is to say, Rick goes out for early idol searching, and then we see everyone else kind of going, gosh, he's idol searching all day. Maybe we shouldn't let him do that. Then they proceed to let him do that all day.
Yes. I mean, part of it is kind of frustrating. Like, I like all of them, but they're missing. It's almost like we got rid of everybody who's like a real, overt threat.
It is weird because in Prost's Q&A this week, he actually addresses this specifically, which is to say that he talks about how because everybody has really low energy at this point, just from having, undergone these conditions with so little food, poor sleep for all this time, is that it can be really hard to summon the energy to do something that you don't feel like you have to do. And it's one thing as a group to say, we should make sure that we keep an eye on him. But whose job is that actually?
Right.
And so the problem is just kind of like, even though in principle it made sense, it's hard to find the motivation to do something that sounds exhausting when you feel like, it's the flip side of what we talked about with Rick having such a big target on his head. If they feel like, oh, well, we're all agreed that it's him and he can't stay immune forever, right? Except that
he can.
Yeah, theoretically. So he keeps looking. I have in my notes here, why didn't they follow through on the idea of giving him a constant babysitter? And then
part of it, like, I was thinking, like, when you're talking, like, is it a generational thing? Because, like, obviously, like, Gavin, Lauren, and Victoria are all very similar in age and younger, and it's more of, like, are they just more observational in nature?
Yeah, I don't know.
But Aurora's in her 30s. She's the same age as Rick. Aurora's the same age as Rick. And I mean, Julie is kind of sort of an anomaly because she's kind of, that's her personality. I don't think that's generational.
Well, Julie's also kind of, sort of on Rick's side. So she's not one of the ones that would really be counted on in that regard anyway. But in any event, he finds another idol, and I was so tickled when the actual score of the episode, the musical score, chimes in on his little news alert jingle that he does. Did you notice that? He kind of
I
does.
didn't write it down. I might have
Oh, yeah. He
in
kind
the
of
moment.
he does
Yeah.
his own little da 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 breaking news, and then the actual music of the episode echoes his little jingle.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was pretty great. He's very proud of himself, as he should be. It's astounding that everyone else doesn't get their act together until the next day when it's too late. But that makes it hilarious. I mean, that's jumping ahead a little bit, though, because first we had the reward challenge.
Yep.
Most of the challenge was fairly standard stuff, but I'm pretty sure the first obstacle was new. And what kind of an ingeniously malicious challenge where toss the ball upward, watch it roll down a track, and then catch it, but then you're also having to high step it over a rope maze. It's like literally designed to divide your focus and make you fall on your face.
Yep.
So, several people fell on their face. It seemed like Julie probably the most often. And then, digging under a beam and then tossing up onto a perch, both of which have been done plenty of times. But Gavin wins.
Yep.
Good for him. Although, not that I think it will cost him or come back to haunt him exactly, but picking Victoria on the basis of not getting many rewards, and then picking Lauren, even though Aurora has had fewer rewards than anybody.
Right. He basically found a roundabout way to pick the two people he wanted to go with.
Right, yeah, and so I think he kind of just shot himself in the foot by using that explanation for the first person when he wasn't necessarily sure how many people he was going to get to pick. And then he couldn't use that excuse again, and then so Aurora, and this is again where it just kind of turned, Aurora got disappointed to feel excluded just when she thought she had kind of connected with people.
But it's like, but again, this goes back to her short-sightedness. It's like, as opposed to taking that feeling that you have of being like, oh, I guess I'm fourth in this group. Maybe you should do something about that instead of just being like, well, we got to get Rick out, because, and that's again, and then the fact at the end when she, this just made the ending that much more frustrating when she blamed them for falling victim to his ploy, and it's like, no, you idiot, they were always voting as a block. Mm-hmm. They had clearly discussed a second plan in case something didn't go the way they wanted, and they, rather than risk it, the three of them just voted together. Yeah. And you were never part of them. You never were.
Well, right, and this idea that Julie is an acceptable substitute to voting for Rick. Why? Yeah. I mean, she was just so single-minded that she's just trying to say, well, anything to hurt Rick, and if Julie's kind of his ally, then we get rid of her.
Right, then by proxy, we're kind of voting at Rick. Even if he
and I think ultimately the problem was that I think she had started to think of it as an alliance, and if it is this alliance of four, then Julie is the only other person available who's not in that alliance, and maybe that's why she's thinking that. But the problem is it's really... Anyway,
the question should have been to go to Rick and Julie and say, "Okay, I'm feeling on the outs over there, but my problem is that we're 3-3 if I come and join you."
Yeah, well,
what could we potentially do here?
Honestly, I think we have to give the credit for all of that to Victoria, though, because we have her having these hurt feelings that she didn't get picked. And it's obvious enough that, Rick and Julie are, right there actually talking about how, gosh, Gavin, didn't you just say you were making the choice based on who hadn't had the reward, and then you don't pick Aurora? And then, of course, there's this scene when they're in the helicopters, and it's like, are we flying right over the beach? Oh, Yeah, there's Aurora. Yeah, we're really happy with this helicopter pilot who's chosen to sort of rub this in her face. I mean, you can see them kind of smiling, but going like, "Oh, that's not maybe not how we would have chosen to do it." But anyway, um, but in any event, let's see. Uh, at the reward, Gavin talks about saying, I hope Aurora is smart enough to know she's still better off working with them. So it seems like they were sincere about wanting to use her to get out Rick when it seemed like Rick might still be a viable target.
Correct.
And then and even in that context, they talk about like, well, maybe it's Devon's first and then Julie next. So like even when Aurora's not there, that's still the conversation they're having. But it's really Lauren that is kind of saying, I kind of like Julie. I would kind of rather vote out Aurora than Julie if we have to go with someone other than Rick. And so we don't know that she didn't convince everyone to change their mind even before Rick's, tribal council shenanigans. But sure didn't help. But then when we have what we have is back at camp though we have Victoria going back to Aurora, and Aurora is saying like, yeah, it hurt my feelings, but I feel like what are my other options at this point, because she does not want to work with Rick because Rick is this huge target. So she doesn't want to hitch a wagon to his star, so to speak. But, I mean, as we see, that what turned out to be was that, they're going to target her instead.
And that's why, the idea, we always joke about, like, when they sort of first initiated this idea of the voting blocks, but how that's developed has been a little bit more interesting. Like, the way the game works, like, you could vote with Rick right now, and if it got you through this vote and got rid of a threat to you, especially now, there are less and less people to make the equation work. Like, if you still wanted to go get back together, they all know Rick's still a threat. It's not like say you got rid of Gavin. It's not like Victoria and Lauren, if they want to get rid of Rick next time, aren't going to be like, well, Aurora pitched her wagon to Rick. Like, no, like, they'll be like, hey, you want to get rid of Rick now? Let's do it.
The problem, though, is that I think that I don't think we're giving Aurora quite enough credit in the sense that her failing here was just that she believed them. They lied to her. They blindsided her, right? They told her the plan was Devon's, and if not him, then Julie. And she believed them. So she thought she was following the plan. And then when the prospect of the idol came out, her thinking is, which turned out to be correct, was he's bluffing. He's not actually going to do that. We should vote for Julie anyway.
Right. But here, her failing was, I think, a little bit more, I'm not trying to bash her, but I think the failing was still a little bit more than just believing them. I still think there was a short-sightedness to just having it being Rick or then Rick's ally. Because what ended up happening is that when the shenanigans came out, the other three of them had a second plan, and she had nothing to go to except, well, just stick to what we're doing, but the rest of them were like, yeah, but we don't need to risk that. Whereas if she had some sort of backup, and again, I don't know that she could have done it, but the fact that she didn't even investigate a backup when she knew she was fourth, the person she wanted to go was immune. Like, I just feel like she should have had that conversation. And ultimately, maybe it doesn't go anywhere. Like you say, okay, we don't really have a good plan to get out of this 3-3 lock, so I just can't really go with you guys. I'm going to have to go.
But the problem is, her siding with Rick and Julie accomplishes nothing. It makes a tie.
No, that's what I'm saying.
You're breaking up a lot tonight.
Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, it's the same as any. I'm not saying that she needed to side with them. I'm saying she could have had the conversation and go to them. Like, she doesn't know what they may have, and whether, because I'm not saying they would do this, but they had an idol, again, they could go and say, okay, if it was a strong enough argument, there is the idea of like, okay, well, if you want to come and vote with us, like we have this idol, like we could play it on Julie, and then we could vote three of us to get rid of one of them, and their votes wouldn't count. Again, not saying they would, but the fact that she didn't even explore that because she just didn't like Rick that much, I think, kind of just bugged me this late in the game. That you got clearly passed up by the other two. You realized you were fourth in the alliance, which was obvious, and you didn't explore even a second option other than like, let's just go with the plan. I'm just going to stick with you, and I think that just frustrated me a little bit.
Like I feel like I was in complete agreement with that at the start of the episode, but I'm kind of talking myself out of it just because I feel like
it is funny because I don't feel like we were just in disagreement.
Well, right, but I'm trying to put myself in her shoes, which is she's part of an alliance of 4 that is clearly aligned against Devon's, and they are actually in agreement that it is Devon's, and if not Devon's, then Julie. Lauren is the one that disrupts that a little bit, but she's part of an actual plan that has a plan and has the numbers. And the plan is Devon's, and if he's immune, then Julie. She's following the plan. And there's only 6 people on the beach. If she goes off, she's talking to Devon's, that makes her a target more than anything else. And with the prospect that talking with Devon's and Julie at best means a tie, unless they've got some weird thing that they might not even be willing to tell her about, even if they have it. Like, I'm not sure that's really a less risky proposition than saying, I'm with an alliance of 4 that says we have a plan.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from there, and
I mean,
it makes a lot of sense. I
hindsight is 20/20. Obviously, she
hindsight
gets
is 20/20, but I was thinking it at the time when I was watching it that I felt like, again, not that she could have done anything about it, but I just would have I felt like while watching it that I would have liked to see her go over there and say, hey, you know how those 3 excluded me from the reward? It makes me feel like I'm fourth in the alliance, but they're still my alliance. And, I'm interested, like, the 2 of you, I'd be curious, like, I would be open to working with you. I just don't know how that would work because it would really only make us 3 and 3. And that's just where I'm at. And then start to walk away and have them say, you're right, yeah, or like, hey, what about this idea? And then you just kind of take in the idea and you say, no, okay, that doesn't work. And you go back to your
We don't know that didn't happen, though.
I feel like they would have showed that. I mean, and especially since she dug in like so hard with like, and they made it a point at Tribal Council that she couldn't see past Rick.
But she was the alternate target that Rick and Julie put forward and voted for.
No, Lauren put that forward.
Well, okay, but also there was discussion about that earlier in the episode. That
but that's again to another point to Aurora is, do you just think that Rick and Julie are just sitting over there just accepting? Like, what did she think they were thinking?
Well,
like, oh well, Rick's immune, so I guess I'm screwed. Oh well, she had to think Rick and Julie had some plan. Like,
well, but sometimes if you're down, if you're down 4-2. It doesn't. A plan doesn't necessarily win. Like if the alliance of 4 had stayed strong, they could have voted out Julie.
Yes, but you're down to such tight numbers. Like you don't even.
We don't know that the conversation you're talking about didn't happen. We didn't see it happen, but we don't know that it didn't.
Yes, I feel very strongly that conversation didn't happen since the whole theme of the episode was Aurora is too short-sighted to look past Rick, and even blows up at the end about it. I feel like if she was open to having a conversation with Rick, we probably would have seen it, and it would have changed the theme.
I guess I'm just saying I agree. She was over-fixated on Rick, even past the point where he was immune and it was kind of moot. But I don't think she realistically had any other choice.
Right. I yes. I just don't feel like she investigated any other choice. That's what frustrated me. It's
Okay.
just like, okay, the three people who clearly I'm the fourth with told me to do this, so I'm just going to do this and try to convince them to stick with it when they all. But I think we kind of know where we both stand on that. So
Yeah.
the other thing that I think that we kind of talked about earlier that this conversation reminded me from a different perspective is that Lauren did initiate this. So now we're talking about again if she has to go make a case at some point later on,
Mm-hmm.
this thing of like because Aurora is going to be so fixated, and let's say Lauren is sitting next to Rick for some reason, and this is a way to like kind of win Aurora over. Is say, you know what, like you were so fixated on Rick, like, but I'm the one that got you out. Like Rick didn't do it; he didn't have the votes. Like I did that, and because Julie didn't matter, and all of a sudden, like okay, that starts to click a few things, and when you have to paint more of a picture than that. But this becomes one more cog in the potential. Like maybe does Lauren have a little bit more case than we were giving her credit for? You know,
Well,
maybe. I'm not saying this is like a slam dunk. Like Lauren can do
yeah.
this, but it's
I think that actually ties back into an interesting observation about last time and this time. You could make a case that that Rick's idol shenanigans actually did not affect the outcome in as much as well. So like obviously him saving himself by playing his idol, but the idea that it was the focus switched to Ron was like Victoria's thing, right? She was the one that kind of led that charge to make that happen, but his idol business made the outcome feel like it was all about him. And then likewise last time, even if it actually was Lauren who shifted the votes away from Julie onto Aurora, Rick
it's
still
gonna
made it
feel
seem
like
like it was his whole thing, his whole show.
right. It which the funny thing from which goes back to our point of like him being the best talker. Like he puts on the best show in general. Like let's say for argument's sake that Lauren convinced all of them to vote for Aurora and they were all going into it with that.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick's sitting there and he said, okay, I believe them, but I just want to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do this whole shenanigans thing.
Right.
And then he puts on this huge show. They do what they were going to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like he convinced the three of them to do something they didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And Aurora, and like to your point, like you said, if they had stuck to the plan that Aurora thought they were sticking to, Julie still would have gone home.
Uh-huh.
When maybe they were never going to stick to that.
Right.
But it looks like he convinced them to. And he tricked them, you know. He's just such a good showman.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So, we had a sidetrack over at Edge of Extinction where I have mixed feelings about this whole sequence, but the whole bit is that they all get letters that they wrote to themselves before the game. I thought it played a little bit weird because given that they didn't have any idea about Edge of Extinction, they had to have been writing letters to themselves with the assumption that they would be reading it after either having won or lost. Right?
Yeah, I guess I never really I didn't pay enough attention to it to think where they thought, but you're right. Now you say that they couldn't have known where they would have received this. So what were they told? Like what?
Yeah.
And I agree that it did feel like even without me even thinking about when they would have done that, it did feel kind of clunkier than I felt like it should.
Well, it was a little bit too obviously contrived that it's kind of like they were each all kind of shuffled off by the producers to sit in some photogenic spot while they read the letter. And, it's like it like sometimes when they do like family letters from loved ones or something like that, you have people sitting together and like reading them to each other and stuff like that. But in this one, it was like have everyone go off by yourself. They have Chris sitting off on this little weird like coral atoll that's like 100 yards off the beach for some reason. Is like you carry a paper letter all the way out there if you're not doing it because the producers told you to.
Right. They're like, hey, yeah, why don't you go read it over there?
Yeah, so it all felt a little bit weirdly contrived and awkward just because the fact that the letters existed had to have been a show contrivance. Like, hey, you guys are about to be on Survivor, so we want you to write a letter to yourself. And they're like, about what? Oh, about how it's like a life-changing experience and it's kind of like a time capsule thing. And you're like, okay, but like, what do you write in a letter like that? You don't know what's going to happen. You have hopes and stuff like. So I guess it's not uninteresting, but it did feel kind of a little half baked.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. My note here is several nice but generic moments.
Yes, that's a fair description.
I did like Aubrey calling herself a unique weirdo. I also liked Reem getting emotional, just talking about kind of recognizing that like what she wanted to show she could do coming on the show was that she could stick it out, she could be a survivor, and even though she was the first voted out, having stuck it out all this time in Edge of Extinction, especially since she has to know her odds of winning some potential challenge and getting back to the game have to be very low. But her making the decision to stick it out anyway, that's something. That's an accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, right, because it's at this point, really, it's just proving it to herself that she can make it at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there's yes, technically she could do, but you're right. Like, she knows that the odd, like, two things have to happen. She has to win her way back in and then compete with people who she's never met.
Yeah.
Outside of one day. Yeah, I mean, that's she knows that's a long shot, and she's still sticking it out, you know? So, yeah, good for her.
Mm-hmm. So we go back to camp, and we get a notable line that's saying, well, there's 6 days left. Did I say it right? Yeah, okay. I'm just kind of playing at, like, they made a big point of, well, 6 days left. It just felt very exposition, sort of.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fine. This is the amazing hide-and-seek sequence where Rick goes idol searching, even though he already has it, and this time they actually try to follow him around, but because he doesn't have to actually look, he can literally just play games with them. Like, he try to work on his Batman disappearance, like with Gavin, where it's like, hey, we're walking together, but you turn your back and I run away.
Yes.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It just made me really like him, like how much fun he had with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then like even when he does that to Gavin, Gavin is not even mad. He's just like bemused. Like, what is he doing? Like, that's the thing is like even these people who are so determined to try to take him out to the extent that they can, even they don't dislike him. Everybody likes him.
Yes.
They like him even when he is literally messing up their game. He's a very charismatic guy. Yeah, so that brings us to the immunity challenge. Lots of people groan at the prospect of word puzzles, but Rick is happy, and he's like, if they're all bad at word puzzles, I only have to be mediocre. That's pretty fun. Yep. So I thought the little shuffleboard thing seemed like, I don't know, a little bit weird. Maybe there's some nuances of the rules that they didn't explain to us, I think. But it's fine. So the shuffleboard thing, and then you have to decide how many letter tiles to try to carry at once between the two handles. We're going over the balance beams and stuff.
Yep.
And Probst does this sometimes, but they made it pretty obvious in this episode that he sometimes gives them clues if they're taking a long time on the word puzzles. Obviously clues in a way that everybody could, benefit in the same way. It's not like to benefit any specific person, but, it's like, the answer was not living on the edge tonight, but, we have Probst saying, everyone's working really hard on the challenge so that they don't go home tonight. And just kind of extra emphasis on tonight. And it actually like cuts over into a couple people going, what did he say? Oh, tonight. Yeah.
Right, and they're realizing they have those letters, and so it gets them at least that one word to keep moving it on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, the other thing that I noticed from this is that it definitely had the blinders up. Mm-hmm. So that you couldn't see, which just reinforces that from now on, if those do not exist, they are okay with you cheating.
Well, right. And it's such a bizarre thing because they've had to be explicit in the past of it is not against the rules. Whether anyone would want to call it cheating to say that you're looking at someone else's answer, it is not against the rules. And so it's like, is it cheating to make use of all of the tools that they have allowed you access to? No, but it also feels like maybe it should be. It's like it's not against the rules, and so therefore it's officially legally okay within the confines of the game, but maybe there should be a rule. And so with the blinders this time it seems like, okay, well, does that mean there's a rule or they're just making it harder? I don't know, but it is one of those rare areas where the show has been very wishy-washy about how they handle that sort of thing.
Yep.
Let's see. So, but Rick wins immunity again. He's so energized and just pumped and having fun with the game, feeling good about where he is, but also just getting energy from trolling people. He's doing great. And so obviously him being immune throws a huge thorn in everybody's plans. But even at this point, he's saying they'll probably want to target Julie, but he's hoping to flip it to Aurora so that he can protect his ally Julie. The others talk about well, does he have something? If he does, he wouldn't give it to Julie. They actually talk about that possibility. And I think it's also true that it's like it turned out that it's always a gamble, but sure enough, he did not actually give it to her. He was definitely bluffing. But let's see. So we have Rick and Julie at this point saying they plan to vote for Aurora. They're hoping to persuade someone. Julie thinks it may be possible to reach out to Lauren, and we know that that's actually true because Lauren has been kind of making some, motions on the other side to that same effect. But they would still need another person because that would still just be 3 versus 3. And this is where, we have Lauren agreeing with Julie. Let's try to convince Gavin to target Aurora rather than Julie. Gavin's open to that, but he wants to get Victoria in on it, to have it be like a group agreement thing and not just a conspiracy.
Right.
And so Gavin tells Victoria, but there's also a little bit of tension even amongst that trio of, Gavin's like, yeah, Victoria, I'm telling you, but I'm also telling you that Lauren was okay with this plan, even if we didn't tell you. So I was the one that wanted to make sure you were included. She was okay with not including you. Just
yeah, you're right. I thought that was a little bit interesting, the way that he kind of subtly threw her out there and playing a little bit of a next time.
Yeah. I think it was a smart move for Gavin because he's got to be thinking about if he is targeting a final 3 with Victoria and Lauren or getting towards the end, he doesn't want them to gang up on him, right?
Yeah, he wants them to kind of have their eye on each other.
Right, exactly. So Victoria is still kind of feeling like she wants to get out Julie at this point anyway. Um, and Devons wants to try to save Julie, and so he has a few tricks up his sleeve, he said. He wants them all confused and paranoid, and that's where we go to Tribal Council. But as we talked about already, it seems possible that the group had already decided to target Aurora instead of Julie anyway.
Yeah.
And so Aurora's frustration that like, oh, you didn't call his bluff. If we had just stuck to the plan, it would have worked, and now she's mad. But it seems possible, even perhaps likely, that they had already changed their minds anyway.
Especially since they all voted together.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so.
Right. I think that, so I think they're not discussing this plan with Rick and Julie, but the writing's kind of on the wall a little bit. So, because, so to begin the tribal council, he says, Rick says him and Julie are the only ones happy he was immune. There's the obvious four-person alliance that Julie knows that she's an obvious target for that reason. And then again, this is where Aurora is still talking about how great Rick is when he's not available as a target. And really, I think that, honestly, there was a lot of other things in this episode, like we talked about, that I'm not sure what other choices she had. But she sure had a choice here, which is to not try to focus the energy during a tribal council on someone you can't vote for. Now, I think maybe if she had framed it a little bit more like, he's gonna win, we have to do everything we can, and that includes voting out his allies. But, it's...
That isn't how it felt, though.
Yeah. I agree, it isn't. It isn't how it felt. And so I'm saying that, like, that might have been a way to take it, but that's certainly not what she was doing. Even if that's kind of what she meant. But it's also, Rick is kind of, driving a wedge into that divide, saying, well, obviously Aurora is the one on the outside of that four. He talks about giving the idol to Julie, says the two of them together are voting for one of the four, but he doesn't say who. And that's why I think that it's, that they didn't discuss the plan with Rick and Julie. Otherwise, they could have easily just said, we're going to vote for Aurora, Aurora specifically says that for all we know, it might be another fake. There's already been a fake, in play. And so, let's see. There's some discussion about, they know that they're all assuming someone's going to come back. I really liked Rick doing his pre-jury manipulation, which was the whole bit about like, well, when I went out the first time, it was because I was being just a nice guy, but now I have the freedom to do anything now because he's playing with house money. And all that was good stuff. It was obviously for the benefit of the jury, but they ate it up. So
yeah, I think my two favorite things that he said in this sequence were that he was playing with house money, and I loved his thing of his defense of why I would use the idol to get one more on Julie instead of keeping it for myself is because I don't actually see it as going from 4, down to 3 to 2. I actually look at it as 3 to 3 because we're going to get somebody back and they're going to be on our side against this majority. And that, while ultimately, like, that's not what he was going to do, it made it credible. It made the bluff. It gave the bluff just a little bit more oomph that I really liked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And so as Rick votes for Aurora, he says, "You're a cool girl who refuses to work with me." Yeah. So there's some tension about whether he's actually going to play the idol. I was pretty sure that he wasn't. Just because,
Why?
the bluff is what you care about. It's like,
Right,
even if it doesn't work, you'd rather still have it than, yeah. But so in any event, Aurora's frustrated. Is like, how do you fall for reverse psychology? But I think the missing piece she wasn't realizing was that they were really kind of already, looking at her before that happened. It wasn't just because of this idol business.
Right. It didn't trick them in tribal council.
So despite that whole get him out, and he's like still, like this, like she's mad at him. I think it's still, there's a little bit of an element of like warning from her to the others of just like saying, like, if I'm on the jury and he's there, I'm going to vote for him. You guys are stupid if you do anything but try to get him out. Yeah. But that takes us to the end of this episode. 5 are left, but 1 will return in our big 3-hour finale tomorrow night.
Yes, 3 hours, and I think you're accurate, or our thing was accurate in that, like, it's going to be quick at the beginning, and that someone's going to come back, like, that's literally going to be the opening, and then we're probably going to go right into, like, another reward / immunity. I think there's not going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of momentum going into it.
It would be kind of interesting to have the person who comes back into the game literally have to go right into another challenge. I don't know if they'll do that, but I think that would be interesting.
What I think would be interesting is if they won both their way back into the game, like, and a reward, and they just put them on the spot with, like, you have to now pick 2 people to go on reward with you. Yeah. And they're like, well, I don't even know what's going on right now, other than what I've seen as a jury member. So who do I go? Like, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be.
So. Well,
we'll see. We don't have long to wait. So.
Which would also, give them some nourishment going into, like, kind of get them, because it would give them a more intimate group to get a relationship with. It would give them a little bit more nutrients, almost put them on a little bit more of a level playing field coming into that next immunity challenge. So we'll see what happens, though. I think they always, for the most part, do a good job. So.
All right. So I think that does it for this week on talking about Survivor. Before we sign off, just one more quick reminder that my book, Phyllis Esposito, Interdimensional Private Eye, is now available for pre-order as an ebook at Amazon.com. So check out ChristianaEllis.com for more information about that.
Do it.
And also, I'm planning to do another stream after we're done here, which will be another installment of Character Creation Hour, which is we're just going to make some Dungeons and Dragons characters. So if that sounds interesting to you, join us. We'll be back after this stream signs off. All right, so good night, everybody.
Good night.